Ready, set, go.
Welcome to the Sweet Spot, an Up Dog podcast. My name is Andrea.
And I am Jack, and we are your hosts today. And today we have a special guest with us. Dre, who is our special guest?
Dr. RuthAnn Lobos as our guest today. Thank you so much for joining us. She specializes in nutrition for active dogs and has a wide knowledge about a bunch of other things, but that's going to be our focus today, is to get some insight and expertise from a very experienced vet about how we can best support our highly active dogs in the area of nutrition. So this is an exciting episode. I love figuring out how to like nerd out and optimize canine fitness and athleticism. So this is a perfect guest for our listeners, I think.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I like how you say I'm a very experienced vet. That makes me feel like I'm not old. I just have a wealth of background.
Yeah,
Exactly.
We won't talk about when I
old is
graduated
a state of
veterinary
mind. Old is a state of mind. You're not old.
school.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about you? Like where do you live? Do you have pets of your own? Do you do any dog sports? What's your
Sure.
passion? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I am based out of Boulder, Colorado, but via Baton Rouge, Louisiana is where I spent the majority of my childhood and went to undergrad and veterinary school there. So I like to say I bleed purple and gold. And then had a short stop in Austin, Texas, and then been out in Boulder for about a little more than 7 years now. And I've been with Purina for almost 20 years, which is crazy to think about. For those of you listening and watching, I was hired as child labor. So I started very, very young. But really, I mean, I will say, like, I have a yellow Labrador who is almost 11. His name is Finn. And then we welcomed in a wire-haired Pointing Griffon puppy who we named Journey. She is now a year and a half. And I call Finn he's my gateway dog into dog athletics. So I've always been I started distance running when I was in vet school as like a stress reliever. It also then has turned into a very social circle for me. But I always would have like my running buddy as one of my dogs. I've had dogs since I was like 7 or 8 years old. And when we moved to Colorado, my husband had always tried to get me into duck hunting and things like that. And for me, for your audience who may not be familiar with duck hunting, you go out mostly when it's cold and overcast and
Dark.
windy, and then you just sit and
It
wait
sounds
and call the ducks in. And I'm like, that sounds like hell to me to just sit. I mean, I know you got your dog, but like, no. And so when we moved out to Colorado, he started to explore pheasant hunting, and that is much more like you are walking around fields and up and down undulations and things like that. And he was like, I think you should come out and see Finn work because I think you would really like this. And so I went one day and walked behind him, and I know this will resonate very well. Is like it is Finn's happy place. Like you like look into his eyes, and he's like, thank you, because this is what I was genetically born to do, and like you are helping fulfill my purpose. And so watching him, and I was like, I have got to get more involved in this world and understand all of this, because I was like, as much as he has been my security guard, because a lot of times I go out and I run at, dark 30, and it's always nice to have a canine companion. I don't know that he would actually
Do
do
anything.
anything, but he's at least a deterrent because he's about 80 pounds. And I was like, so let's give this back to him. And through that, it certainly expanded my understanding and it was a passion I didn't even really fully understand that I had. I'm certified in canine rehab as well as veterinary acupuncture, and that came about because in the sports world, I've experienced many an injury myself, and I've been certified in rehab for about 15 years, and it was at the very beginning where it used to be, okay, if your dog tears their ACL, then let's crate rest them for 6 to 8 weeks after it's repaired, and then just let them go. And then no wonder why they tore their other cruciate, because they had been just sitting. And so it was right on the cusp of like us kind of taking both from the human side as well as the veterinary side, actually more on the equine side of things, the horse side of things, um, and really understanding like we have to do physical rehabilitation on our dogs after they have injuries, or that's going to just lead to more injuries. And so I kind of like I started in that world, but it was really Finn who like launched me into this super passion around canine sports and canine athletes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And which dog did you have both dogs with you in Vale or?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Mostly Finn. I was a little nervous about Journey because she's only a year and a half,
Sure.
and I was like,
Yeah.
that's a lot. It's noisy. There's tons of people, tons of dogs. But yeah, they were both there with me.
I thought I saw Finn, and he's a big boy. So if you
Yeah.
were running with Finn, I wouldn't mess with you. For sure. I am
Yeah.
sure that he's doing a good job of being a good protector there. So, talking about dog sports, and a lot of times people might have a pet, and perhaps they get a pet that they realize is way more active than what they thought, and they do look to dog sports to become more active with their pet, and just like you said, to give their dog that purpose and to let their dog do what they love to do. But when sometimes when folks make this transition, they might make this transition into dog sports, and perhaps their only other experience is having a pet dog that was, maybe it was just a couch potato and lounged around with them. Um, when when you do go into this dog sport world and your dog is a very active participant in your activities outside and stuff, like what has to kind of go through our head in terms of like their nutrition and the way in which we make sure that we're providing those things for our dog that they need, being that they're having a much more active lifestyle.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's so much in there to unpack, but I will start. I mean, I think, and this is probably more in your area of expertise, but kind of building off of what I know from my own like marathon training and then working and conditioning canine athletes in other spaces. It's like, you want that slow buildup, right? Like you want them, in the running worlds, they talk about, okay, don't increase your mileage more than 10% per week. And so I think that's, super important to just keep that in the back of your mind. But then also when we look at foundationally fueling our dogs, kind of a couple of differences. I think automatically people think, okay, well, I need to like jack up their calories really, really quickly. And it's like, no, again, kind of that gradual increase, but really having those fine building blocks from the get-go of what's going into the bowl. So things to think about, like a great protein source. You want that because we start with, I know we as humans are like, okay, what ingredients do I need? Do I need chicken and bananas and rice and whatever? But really, it's the nutrients that those ingredients are providing. So looking at that protein and when we look at like what pet food companies choose, it's important to know that they've got good qualified people who are putting that diet together. So, boarded nutritionists, boarded veterinary nutritionists, PhDs, all of that of really understanding, okay, the dogs need protein. And then you got to bring in the marketers because the dogs don't buy their own pet food. So we have to talk to owners, through the bag or commercials or whatever. So we know that's why, again, we kind of develop diets that are of different protein sources. So you might have some that are salmon, some that are chicken, some that are beef. Really, when you look at what our canine athletes or any dog needs, it's really the protein that those ingredients provide. And there are some different sensitivities or even allergies that develop, but it's, that protein to fuel their muscles, to really support their skin, which is their largest organ. And especially our canine athletes that are twisting and turning and, doing all kinds of acrobatics. We've got to make sure that skin and hair coat is in top-notch condition. And then it's also kind of something that's a little different from humans who we use carbohydrates for endurance. So like if you're going to go on a long run, people are like, oh, I'm going to eat, a pasta dinner or pizza or something like that the night before. Our dogs actually for endurance use fat. And that is how they are programmed. That is their preferred fuel for, long activities out there. And I often get asked, like, what's a long activity for a dog? In the human world, we talk about like anything over 90 minutes of sustained exercise. And it kind of gets that way, but we need to think about not just the activity itself for the dogs, but there's the warm up, which I know like from my experience, it's like for them, their warm up starts like as soon as you have any intimation that there's going to be training happening. So like for me, it's like as soon as I put on my running shorts and grab my running shoes, Finn is like doing laps in the house, like he's all jazzed up. And I would say that's almost when their activity starts. And then certainly the cool down that happens as well. But so we're looking at protein for their muscles, fat for their endurance. And one of the things I always like to call out is that like our dogs are originally descendants of the wolves, but they have evolved. So they can use carbohydrates. They actually, grains are not bad for our dogs. So really having that supply of quote unquote readily available energy for them in that carbohydrate form in their diet allows that quick energy, and then they can look to the fat for those sustained training sessions that we have and those sorts of things. And I don't see it as much in the dog sport world because I also I have a little side hustle, so I still practice a little bit and have a mobile acupuncture and veterinary rehab clinic, but and I don't see it a lot in my canine sport dogs, but it is out there in the world of our dogs being overweight. So I think that's something really to look at if you are thinking about like launching into this dog sport world is, talk to your veterinarian, have them assess whether or not your dog is in ideal body condition. I demonstrated this at the GoPro Mountain Games in the IDC ring about the healthy hug. So you want to be able to feel their ribs. They should have a waistline and an abdominal tuck, because we know if they are overweight, not only does it affect their lifespan, but it also can lead to more injury. And certainly, if you're just getting started, we want to make sure everybody's set up for success with that good, solid nutrition, as well as being that ideal body weight.
And so just step back real quick. That sounds to
Yeah.
me a lot like keto. So I'm a nutrition junkie on the human
Okay.
side. So I played a lot with different fuel sources for humans. And the way that you just described the resources that we're feeding their dogs is similar to how keto works. Obviously, protein and then fat is as your primary energy source. And if you put carbohydrates in there, your body's going to burn through the carbohydrates first
Yeah.
and as a quick energy, and then go through your fat as a really rich kind of high torque, dense energy supply. So that's really interesting for those of us out there that have also done human nutrition stuff. You can kind of think about it as a keto thing. So it's not like carbohydrates are bad, but inside of that fueling program, the way that dogs naturally fuel, they're more of like a keto type thing. And so you don't want to overload them with carbohydrates for energy. That's just going to give them a really quick, it's like taking an energy shot real quick. it burns through really quickly, but it's not going to give you that long sustained energy. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty close, but I also don't want to like villainize carbs for our dogs because they
right?
are like their metabolism is wired to use them. It's when it shifts into that endurance space, and they do that endurance or that switch much better than we do. Like I know, like people will talk about, oh, I've hit a wall or something like that when they're in an endurance exercise, because it takes like a bit more of a hard key turn for us to go from using carbs to using fat. With our dogs, it's almost like they're itching to do that, and so as soon as those carbs are burnt up for them, they can they can go the distance, and that's one of the reasons why, like when we look at some of the performance formulas that are out there, so like our
Yeah.
Pro Plan 30-20 sport formula, it was based on research looking at dogs' endurance, and being able to maximize, this will kind of nerd out for those folks, their VO2 max, so their ability to use oxygen for energy. And we found that sweet spot with that 30% protein and that 20% fat to really be able to maximize their aerobic endurance.
Yeah, that's super duper interesting to a nutrition nerd. Love it. That's really cool. Now, it's not on our question board, but just to put it in that. So like throughout the day as a marathon runner or an athlete, if I'm doing a CrossFit competition or a weightlifting competition throughout the day, I have to supplement with energy. From the dog side, should we be supplementing with a fat-based energy or a carbohydrate-based energy throughout the day? Or do
Yeah,
we
that's a
do that?
yeah, that's a great question. So what, and this was actually some research that was done by two folks up in Canada, and looking at the endurance of dogs and the timing of feeding. So I think that was one of the questions
Yeah. Yeah.
that had come through as well. And they looked at, it was some beagles, and they were on little doggy treadmills, and there were
Paint
groups
a
that were.
picture for us. This is adorable. I
I
love
know,
it.
right? I just can imagine. I can just picture
I
them like
just picture the beagles on the
in the little
mouth
gym, and they're
wheel.
just going, and they've got like Animal Planet on the TV or something like that. And so they looked at feeding 1 hour ahead, 4 hours, 12 hours, and 24 hours. And what they found is that the beagles who were actually fed 24 hours before had the greatest endurance, and they were not supplemented throughout. So I think that's one of the things. And there's going to be individual cases. I do consults on dogs that have, in the hunting world, it's called hunting dog hypoglycemia. And in these endurance long-term things, their blood sugar will plummet. As veterinarians in the nutrition realm, we still don't quite understand, because it's really hard to replicate that in a research scenario. So we oftentimes deal with that on a case by case basis. But typically, our dogs don't really need to be supplemented throughout. Where there is benefit is very similar on the human side, where it's like that 30-minute window after exercise that they're like, you need to get your protein and your carbohydrates in and all of that, so you can have those amino acids to replenish the muscle breakdown and energy that was used and all of that. And that's very similar for our dogs. I do put on the caveat of like, it's not when your training session ends that 30 minutes begins. It's really after the dog, again, has kind of cooled down and given their whole like neuro system and digestive system and respiratory system to have a chance to, get back to normal. And then that's when that 30-minute window, we want to try to get some nutrition back into them. And ideally, I know there's a whole range of supplements that are out there for recovery. But what we found for our dogs is really it's kibble that is going to be the best source of recovery for them, given that it's complete and balanced, has all those amino acids to rebuild that protein, has that fat source in there to get those vitamins absorbed and all of that. And that's really, which kind of simplifies things. So it's one less thing
Right.
you have to think about and remember.
I know. I'm really liking this answer.
I know. I like this. Is and it opened up another. Like I have three more questions based on this.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So if we're talking about supplementing 30 minutes after, what I've always learned is that the dogs stay warm for about 2 hours. Is that accurate? So like after they're done, so when I was doing shows,
Sure.
that was the information I received is that you don't have to re-warm up your dog if they're still working within that 2 hour limit, their body is still warm.
Yeah.
Is that what we would estimate as an average cool down time for that system to regulate as maybe a 90-minute, a 2 hour window before we start counting that 30 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's more looking, it's probably shorter than that. It's more looking and I'll, my public service announce or disclaimer is like every dog is unique.
Different.
So it's
Sure.
important to talk to your veterinarian and assess your dog. But in general, like looking at getting their respiratory rate back down and that in itself will then also regulate their heart rate and things like that. And that's really kind of when that 30 minutes starts for them, similar to us, where it's like as soon as you walk back in the door after an exercise session or leave the gym after an exercise session, it's not like you're immediately cooled down, but maybe you get in the car and you drive home and it's like, okay, I'm back to regulating, and where that metabolism is still burning is good to get them in, get those calories in. But I just hesitate when they are still like actively panting and they're like, you can tell they are still like in the go mode. I prefer them to be like calmer, less panting, almost respiratory rate back to normal before I'm going to ask them to put anything more into their system.
Okay, one more quick question, and then we can go back
Yeah.
to our sorry, Jack. I
It's
just
not all about you, Dre. Come
I'm
on.
sorry. This is not even for my personal dogs. Okay, so the other thing that I hear that's super valuable that a lot of people use during competitions is a hydration booster, something for electrolytes, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If we're not worried about supplementing for energy with fat or food throughout the day, what's the import of having an electrolyte supplement on a day when we're competing all day long?
Yeah. So the
Fighting soccer.
biggest, the biggest, most important thing is the water component of that electrolyte supplement. So our dogs don't sweat like we do. They pant to offload heat. There's a few little sweat glands like in the pads of their paws and like in weird places like along their eyelids and things like that. But for the most part, they are not losing that sodium and potassium and all of that like we do when we sweat. But I do think, there are some dogs who like it doesn't matter. They could be like shriveled up and 25% dehydrated and you offer them water and they're like, "No, thank you. I'm excited about competing and
Right.
that is all I can think about." So that's really where I'm kind of the mindset of like if it gets your dog to drink water, fantastic. And then, go for it.
That's
Jack,
yeah, that's something that I know a couple of our guys struggle with. They at a competition, honestly, traveling in general, when we're traveling,
Yeah.
it's hard to get them to drink as much water as they typically drink at home. And so we try to do things like that to add a little like coconut water or something like that, that anything that would like help them want to drink more water.
yeah, so we talked about nutrition throughout the day and supplementing throughout the day as far as energy for competition days. But one of the questions that was on our list that we didn't quite answer in that conversation, that I want to make sure we button up here is on competition days, should we feed our dogs at a certain time or only once or twice a day? Like I always feed twice a day. Should I feed just once a day, like in the morning if it's a competition day, or should I wait if they're not pulling the energy from immediate feeding? So what would you recommend on a competition day as far as feeding for a schedule that would best serve the dogs?
Yeah, yeah. So, honestly, research shows us that feeding the night before and having that empty GI tract for them is really what is going to set them up for the best success. And so when we think about, if you think about it from like a physiology standpoint, there are many factors. So, it takes about 6 hours for a dog's stomach to empty. And so then it's going into their small intestine and there's a lot of water and blood flow and energy that's being dumped into that digestive system in order to get the food broken down and the nutrients absorbed. And when we're competing, we want the blood flow and the energy to be out into their heart and their lungs and their muscles, as well as we want, them to keep the water where it needs to be, for all of that cellular function to be happening. And so, it's really ideal, again, for them to have that ahead of time. What also happens, which I'm sure y'all have experienced as well, is that excitement for them accelerates their GI tract in a way. There's like
All
usually
ranges of
there's
ways.
yeah, like usually there's a poop beforehand. Maybe it starts to get runny and things of that nature. So really, then all that great nutrition that we talked about with the protein and the
Wow.
fat and carbs is like getting shot through their
Yeah.
intestines, and now they're not absorbing those nutrients as well as they should. So it's really great for them to be fed their main meal the night before and give that GI tract a chance to have normal digestion, have that energy and blood flow going there while the dog is sleeping. And then, the next day, it's literally like tank is topped off and they are ready for the road trip.
Okay, last
So
question. And this
let me
round. Okay, go
let me
for it.
add in something here. You've been talking
Yeah.
too much, Dre.
This is so cool. This is so cool. I'm like, I am soaking in all this knowledge. And somebody else is going to find this very valuable other than me also,
Oh no,
Jack.
absolutely, absolutely. I was just like, let me get my question in.
Get your question in.
Um,
Okay, good.
so on that note about feeding, like making sure we feed the night before, should I feed a little bit more than I
This is my
typically do?
question.
Perfect.
Good.
It was, do you feed more than you normally do?
Right, like if I
Yeah.
normally feed a cup or whatever if that's their normal dinner, should I feed
Yeah.
a little bit more and then not worry about it the next morning?
Yeah, I would say I would feed your daily ration, whatever that is. So for example, like Finn, he eats 3 cups of food a day. So like he's gonna get that 3 cups for dinner and then not until dinner again the following night.
Okay, got it. That was my question. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jack.
Yep,
See, look how
perfect.
aligned y'all are.
Just on the same page. All right, now you can ask the next question, Jack, because I talk too much.
All right. So first of all, we've kind of talked, which again, I love the way this is panning out because it's actually making things easier for me as a pet owner. I know if I'm feeding a quality dog food, I don't need to worry so much about supplementing throughout the day. I just want to get my dog to drink water on those days that well, anytime, but especially on
Sure.
the competition days, right? So this idea of supplements, and like I know that there are some supplements though that can help our dogs. Like for instance, I know that you talked with us at the last IDC a little bit about the importance of gut health. And
Yep.
so like when there's so many supplements out there, in the dog world and in the human world, but in the dog world, like what would you recommend as like, is there an area that even though I'm feeding quality dog food, even though I'm doing the best to keep my dog healthy, what things could help us in terms of supplements?
Right. And it's upwards of like 85%, I think, of pet parents give their dogs and cats supplements. And it is kind of like the wild, wild west out there, both on the human side as well as on the veterinary side. And everybody, I take supplements myself, and it's like, it's a very easy entry into the supplement world. So, there are companies who will put magical claims on the outside of the bottle or package or whatever, and really maybe only have pixie dust on the inside. And so I really strongly recommend, like, whatever supplement you're choosing to give either yourself or your dog, that you make sure there's some sort of third party guarantee for quality and safety. One of the things, like as a veterinarian, that sometimes we get knocked for is like, oh, you're just recommending this supplement because you want the bill to be higher when we check out. And it's like, no, like when we as veterinarians make a recommendation for a supplement, our license is on the line. So if there is something that, is wrong or whatever, or it's, not effective or whatnot, like that reduces our credibility. So if you get a recommendation from your veterinarian on XYZ supplement, it comes with that, that guarantee as well. It's like the onus is on us as veterinarians to do our due diligence on research for quality and safety, and then looking at, is there published research to support whatever you are trying to boost up, right? So there's kind of two that I love for our canine athletes. One is a joint supplement, because all of the twists and turns and tweaks and, that we ask of them that they do themselves, that puts stress and strain on their joints. And the joint is kind of like it's a little enclosed, encapsulated area. And so if there is inflammation that gets started in there, it's really hard to get it dampened down. And once that cartilage starts to erode, it doesn't repair in the same way as it was originally formatted in the body. But then when you look at joint supplements, again, there's like a whole array of things, everything from kind of the traditional that people think about with glucosamine and chondroitin. But then there's omega-3s and green-lipped mussels and, collagen and, all of the different things. So you really want to make sure that, again, there's research to support what that specific ingredient that you are looking at in the supplement. So in that space, there's mixed research on the importance of glucosamine and chondroitin. There are some that say it's fantastic. There are others that are like, it's nothing more than a placebo effect. In my head, I'm like, it's been used long enough in the joint support space, and there's nothing that says that it's, was going to be harmful for our pets. So I'm good with using that. There's great research to support using fish oil for anti-inflammatory and joint protective purposes. In the collagen world, there's mixed research as well. So when we look at, there's different kinds of collagen. There's type 1, type 2, type 3. I think there might even be type 4, that all play different roles in the kind of the structure of tendons and ligaments, and things like that. And I mean, it's booming. The collagen world, supplement world on the human side is out of control. On the dog side, we've got growing body of evidence that it has better support than glucosamine and chondroitin. But again, when you're like, well, there's all a range on whether or not glucosamine and chondroitin works. So I would say, but again, there's nothing that says that collagen is dangerous for our dogs. So if it's something that and there, that you can afford, and it's not going to, tip the scales on your financial budget, I do think, that's a valuable add in the supplement world. But again, understanding the company behind the product. The other one that I love is certainly a probiotic, right? So, about 80% of the immune system starts in the GI tract and is associated with the GI tract. So if we want our sport dogs to be out there with us, doing all the adventures that we want with them, having a good, healthy gut is going to be critical for overall health and well-being. And especially like on competition days, or if you've got a long event, I'm a big fan of like starting the probiotic 2 or 3 days ahead of time and having it go throughout that competition, and then a day or two on the other side, because there's the buildup and the excitement and exercise and activity are all natural stressors. And so if we can set the GI tract up for success, again, they're going to be absorbing their nutrients. They're going to be, hopefully have that better endurance and stay injury free.
That was a great answer.
Thanks.
We've been discussing a lot about how to keep our dogs fit and healthy, because they play disc with us.
Yeah.
But disc is not a sedentary sport for the dog or the human. And I think inside, we all know that it's important for our dogs to be fit and healthy and feel their ribs and have a nice tuck and do all of that. But I don't know that that we put the same import on how we care for the health and sport ability of our own bodies. So how could you share with us a couple tips of how you stay fit or how we can stay fit to help keep up with our dogs in disc sports?
Yeah. Well, I will throw out the caveat that I'm not a certified personal trainer or any,
Timer received. Click.
anything of
So
that.
got it.
Yeah, but I can speak from my own personal experience. And, it is like, I mean, I talk about this, so I do a lot, as I mentioned earlier, like in the hunting dog world. But the same as in this, the reality of having a dog in our life is that their lifespan is significantly shorter than ours. And you may only have, if you're lucky, you get 8 to 10 seasons, right? Or 8 to 10, IDCs with them. And so it is, I talk a lot about like we don't want to be the reason why our dogs can't compete. And so I do, I'm now in my mid 40s. And it's, I read a lot about like the importance of strength exercises. And, it can be as simple as it's a trend now that's out there, but like the weighted vest thing, and that's real, I mean, it works your core. And that's something where like maybe that's a recovery activity of, a 2 mile walk with your dog, and that's their recovery, but maybe that's your workout and you've got the weighted vest on. And on that note, I did read that it's only supposed to be 10% of your body weight is what your weighted vest should be. So, keep that in mind if you decide to go down that route. And there's
150
lots of
pound
great
person puts on
resources.
a 15-pound vest. So you're
Yeah.
not putting yourself down with a 35, 45-pound vest. If you've never done that, you're not a 450-pound person.
Right, right.
10% of
And
your body
then,
weight.
I mean, I think it is a matter of, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And so, I'm a schedule person. And so it's like I schedule that workout time for me. And so that, because I know that's going to be critical come the fall when Finn and I are going to be out, tracing across the uplands. And so it's like, take that time. If it's important for your dog to be in shape and fit for playing disc, it's got to be, you are, as you mentioned, you are part of that equation. And so it's equally as important to add that time to your calendar of training as well.
Awesome.
I don't think that that's something that people think about as much as they do about all the dog things, that they're doing to keep their dog healthy. So thank you for adding that in. And I know I'm not going to be looking forward to any. There's not going to be any rib checks before I go out, right? Like to make sure
No,
I'm.
no.
Checking for ribs. You check the ribs. Yeah,
All
I mean,
right.
it's the same thing that she said before. If you have all that extra weight on your body, it's hard on your joints, and you increase your risk of injury. And the
Yeah,
injury is going to take you out, and then you're going to have a high drive, very fit dog that doesn't have a handler to play with it because
you're
you're
right.
Well,
so yeah.
I know that in seasons in the past, there have been a couple times when I haven't been able to like get to a disc when I wanted to or move in a particular way that I wanted to. And I do feel like, oh man, I was the weak member of the team. I was the one who kind of let my dog down and wasn't able to get where I needed to get or position myself in the right way. And, you know, you want to be a good team member. You don't want to let your dog down. And so if we can do a few things to kind of help ourselves stay fit, that's going to make a better team.
I love the idea of a cool down walk with your dog, even if it's just a mile with a 15% over 10% over your body weight. So like, 10, 15 per, 15-pound weighted vest.
Yeah, yeah,
With a cool down walk could be a great. And I'll tell you what, I'm not an endurance person. I hate running. I'm a power lifter type person.
yeah.
So a mile walk is a lot. That's a lot. Like my coach gives me 3 mile walks all the time, and I hate them. I hate them. So like that's enough. Just starting with like
Yeah.
just a cool down mile walk with your dog with a 15-pound vest is enough. That's enough of a workout to get started and get your joints lubed up and your body and your metabolism kicked up to burn, keep that energy, the good healthy energy going. So
Yeah, yeah. I like to say that motion is medicine, and that applies both to our dogs as well as to us as humans, for sure.
yep. What do you think? Are you feeling a little time warpy, Jack?
Yes, but Dr. RuthAnn does not know what we're talking about here. But
Yes,
we at the end of our podcast, we do a little thing. It only takes
1 minute.
a minute.
Okay.
And we have we're going to blitz you with 10 questions. They're just fun questions. They don't have
Okay.
anything to do with
Silly.
anything we've been talking about.
Okay.
Just kind of a cool way to get to know you a little bit better. And we see whether or not you can answer all 10 questions in the 60 seconds. Okay?
Yeah,
So
your
don't
objective
think too much about them. Whatever pops into your head, just give us those answers.
gotta be snappy. Are you ready?
Okay. I guess
Cool.
so.
The favorite part. All right.
Bring
All
it.
right. So Andre and I will go back and forth. We'll go back and forth with the questions. Dre's going to start us off with the timer. You ready, Dre?
Ready.
All right.
All right. Ready, set, go.
All right. If you could see the world in only one color, what would you want that color to be?
Green.
Ooh. What's your favorite type of music?
Country.
Who is your favorite Disney character?
Gosh. The Little Mermaid?
Good one. Do you prefer driving a car, a motorcycle, or a bicycle?
Bicycle.
35
What's
seconds
your
left.
favorite activity to do with your dog?
Hunt.
If given a chance, on whom would you spy?
Ooh. The president?
I was gonna say the same thing.
All right. Is mayonnaise on French fries okay?
No.
Good answer. Name 3 desserts. Oh, you gave her a 3.
Of 3 desserts?
3 desserts?
Frozen, soft serve ice cream, brownies, and chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, Jack.
How much time we got, Dre?
4 seconds. I have no time. You
Oh.
just
Ah!
3 seconds in.
Oh,
Okay, I'm
no, well,
pausing.
I
You give
didn't
me a question and then I'll
give
start.
her 5 seconds back. We
I
got
did.
2
I'm gonna.
questions.
Yeah, you ask the question. 5,
All right. Do aliens exist?
Yes.
2. If you starred in a sitcom, who would be the name of it?
What would be the name of it?
What would be if you starred in it? Listen, I'm pushing buttons and asking questions at the same time. Okay, we're just gonna give her this question. If you starred in a sitcom, what would be the name of it?
Running Crazy.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
We're gonna give you a pass on that because we delayed your ending there by
Time
5
warp
seconds. So I think it would have been
complete.
just at time, and you were super quick. And by the way, you put the 3 question at the end, which is hard.
Yeah.
He likes to
Yeah.
throw a doozy in there, asking for 3 of something, and that's
Yeah.
always the biggest thing. But usually he does it around 3 or 4 question, but he did it at 8.
It wasn't purposeful. I wasn't trying to be tough.
Okay.
It just landed at question 8.
Landed that one. But excellent job on our time warp challenge. We're gonna give you a win on this one. Yay!
Nice job. I love that sitcom title. That was perfect.
That was a really good
Thanks. It literally just, I mean, it's pretty accurate. So I guess that's why it came to mind so fast.
Run around
Well,
crazy.
Thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I know that you're busy this weekend with things coming up for the IDC qualifier in Huntington Beach, which is exciting.
Yeah.
So have fun with that. But like I said, thank you for joining us during this busy time. And hopefully we'll be able to maybe get you back again to ask some different questions sometime.
Yeah. This was super fun. Had a great start to the weekend.
Good.
Valuable information for our listeners too. Like this was just, I mean, I've been doing this for a while and I learned a lot. And this is particularly an area of interest for me, and I've learned a lot in this episode. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us. We're very grateful.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me and for your passion for dog sport and getting the word out and bringing more people into the world. I think it's fantastic.
Awesome.
Absolutely. All right, Updoggers. Well, hopefully you got a lot of great information from this episode, and I know you're out there in these great summer months with your dogs, having fun, playing disc. So now you've got all these great things about nutrition to kind of keep in mind. In the meantime, Dre, until we see them again, what should we do?
Be kind to each other.
And be kind to your dogs. We will see you next time on The Sweet Spot.
Thank you.
You've been talking
Yeah.
too much, Dre.